Jason.
My name's Luke. How you doing, mate?
Good, mate. May as well introduce the guest.
Yeah. So without any further ado, welcome Darren to the Australian Herpetoculture podcast, mate. How you doing?
Thanks, guys. Good to see you guys as well. Thanks for having me on board. Really,
thanks for coming on, mate.
Oh, no worries. It's always good to help and share what we've learnt over the years. So hopefully someone will benefit somewhere.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, thanks for doing the live with us as well. I think you're our first guest that's jumped on to do a live stream. We're still trying to get our necks around this, so
yeah, it's a bit of fun, isn't it?
Yeah. We figured, because of all your live cutting egg videos that you've done recently, that you wouldn't mind it. So
yeah, not at all. I think it's good too. Like you see some of the YouTube stuff, and the people edit stuff out. I think the mistakes and the tongue slips and the tongue ties and that are all part of the experience. So I agree. I enjoy it.
We're only human at the end of the day, aren't we?
Oh, that's it, mate. Absolutely. We all make mistakes.
That's it. Well, mate, why don't you just try to kick us off here, because we'll just jump straight into these kind of questions. As you said,
Sure.
you can talk underwater, so you may as well get started before we run this to 4 hours or something like that. Mate, welcome to the show. As we said, Darren's one of Australia's leading python morph breeders and works on a plethora of carpets and Antaresia projects as well, from memory. Yeah, man, you've been doing a killer job with all those live videos and stuff over on Facebook. I've been enjoying tuning into a few of those, even though I'm not big into my, mass python production and morphs and all that sort of stuff, but I still find it interesting, Everyone's got something that tickles their fancy, so, it's good stuff. Mate, do you just want to give us kind of a quick rundown about how you ended up with about 5,000 pythons behind you?
Well, it's kind of the longer version. It's always been a lifelong passion, but growing up as a kid, I've always had a love of reptiles and sharks, to be honest. And unfortunately, parents, Dad in particular, was always, the only good snakes are dead snakes sort of mindset, because back in the early mid-70s when I was a young kid, they just weren't kept as pets, or they didn't know anyone that was. And we used to do a lot of shooting growing up, and we'd go out in the bush, and we'd only go in winter because of snakes, and it was always terrible. But always had this drive just to love and an interest and a curiosity. And every time we go to the reptile park or the animal worlds back in the day, always trying to get my hands on blue tongues and chasing things around the backyard and lifting rocks and doing all that sort of stuff when I was away. But it wasn't until I was probably 12 or 13, and a friend of my dad's used to own a gun shop at Top Ride, Lee, and he'd been talking to him. He goes, "Oh yeah, I've got a couple of snakes." He goes, "If ever your son wants to come up, bring him up, leave him up here for a few hours, and we'll play with some snakes." And I'm like, "Oh, unreal!" And kept bugging Dad. Finally, he took me up there, get up to this guy up in his little lounge room sort of thing. He's got death adders and red bellies and everything. He's like, "Oh, here you go." Pulls out a 3-foot red belly and just gives it to me. And here I am, none the wiser on, venom or any of that sort of stuff back in the day. And that was it. I was in love. I was hooked. Couldn't get me away. I'm like, I got back and I'm telling Dad, I was playing with this snake. It was unreal. I was in love. He said he's going to give me one, and I get a setup, and he'll show me what to do and all this sort of stuff. Oh, yeah, what sort of snake was that? Red belly black snake. Bloody bull crap. Was never allowed back in his shop at all. He got on the phone and abused the guy and said, "How could you let my son handle something like that?" And I'm like, "What's wrong?" Didn't know any different. But that fired a passion and a drive in me to keep reptiles. No matter how hard I fought at home, it was like, no. Finally in 97, I bought a house, and I think it was about 6 months after we moved into the house. I said to my wife, "I've always wanted a snake." So he said, "Oh, yeah, that sounds right. I wouldn't mind having a pet snake." So I bought a snake, then bought some lizards, then bought more snakes. I think within 12 months, I had 40 reptiles. And I happened to buy, and I think it was I was just lucky at the time. I managed to get some bearded dragons, like from a very first clutch that hatched through a guy I met. And he said, just take them home, just feed them everything, like feed them this, feed them that, like just nonstop. So that's what I did. I didn't know any better. And I just absolutely demolished these things. Turns out they're a pair. So in 12 months, I've got a clutch of bearded dragon eggs. I'm like, what do I do? He's like, oh, just chuck them in a container and put them on your fridge. So some vermiculite, all the eggs, put it in on the fridge and hatch my first bearded dragons. And that first experience in that relatively short time, that just sealed it. And I've never had anything less than that in reptiles in over 20 years of keeping. So, but yeah, so kind of did lots of lizards. I've had boids, I've had central netteds, bearded dragons, easterns and centrals, mountain heath dragons, Jackie dragons. I've had amii. I've had Castle Mountain, Castle Mountain, northern velvet geckos.
Yep.
Aldura. Had Spencer's monitors. I've had Aki monitors. I've had all sorts of stuff. And then I think I killed myself with the constant breeding and the food intake every day that they required. So I used to breed all my own wood roaches. I had about 10 tubs, like 50-litre tubs of wood roaches. And I don't know if you guys have ever kept and bred woodies. I got an allergy to them. There was like yeah, black tubs. Yeah, there was every time I started cleaning out the wood roaches, I basically got like hay fever, seemed to itchy eyes, runny nose, and I couldn't do it. And that was a decision. Once that got that bad, I'm like, no, I'm done. So I started selling out all the lizards. The last to go are my Akis. I absolutely loved my wrist-tail monitors from Mount Isa locale, really nice purples and yellows. And they were the last to go. And at that point in time is when I just started doing more and more with the pythons, realizing, hey, that's cool. I can feed these guys like once a week, once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks, and not go to the markets and buy massive bags of veggies and cut up massive salad bowls of veggies for bearded dragons and things like that and worry about insects and all that sort of stuff. So, and that was how I ended up at this point. Well, it wasn't as bad as what it is now, but that's how I kind of ended up with so many snakes. And then once the mutations got involved and working with new mutations, suddenly you've got to hold things back, and that's where the collection suddenly rapidly grows, so to speak. So that's kind of the long version of how I ended up with it.
That's it's definitely a pretty familiar story in a lot of ways. I think we've all gone down that snowball at some point or another, and it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. I have to ask though, because I've got the same sort of woody allergy that you're referring to there. I ended up just buying like a massive respirator with like the chemical cartridges, just so you're pretty much not getting any oxygen through there. But that's the one thing that seems to be my saving grace with working with the woodies, is just making sure that I'm smart and I cover up basically. But yeah,
look, it's probably something you should do. In hindsight, I mean, when was that? I was breeding woodies back in probably 03, 04, something like that, and it was. Didn't really give it a thought, but you're 100% right, a mask. But it was like constant. And then breeding the wood roaches, like just getting the setups right. So I don't know if you use fluon around the tops of your tubs to stop them running out. I used no lids on them at all, just had the fluon. And like yours, they're up high on, like the white tubs over there behind me, the enclosures. They would sit up on top of there. So they had the heat coming through from the ceramics in the enclosures to keep them warm. And I'd just lob up carrots and I was breeding rats and mice then, so I used to take all the crumbs. I used to actually sieve all the rat food. Had a big tray with a mesh on it, and I'd take all the crumbs, put it in a tray, all the crumbs of the rat mouse food, and put that in with the wood roaches. So they had a good nutrient supply of food, and I'd throw carrots or that sort of stuff in for moisture. So they had moisture content going in. And they bred like no tomorrow. And it was just a rotating stock. So I found... I don't know about yourself, Luke, but I find keeping about 1 kilo in a 60-litre tub seemed to be the ideal mass of wood roaches. As soon as you got too low or you took too many adults out, the production would slow right down. And it took me a while to get the balance right to feed the amount of lizards I had and to be able to keep a viable collection or colony of the wood roaches. So once I got that balanced, and it worked out to be about 10 tubs. So it'd be like one tub, you'd use it all, then you'd go down the other end, and then you'd do the next one. And by the time you got to that one again, it was fully loaded and off you go. And I'd sell off the excess if I had extras, and I'd sell those. Used to take them to the AHS and sell them to people there. It was good. Help feed the lizards.
Yeah.
But they are a fantastic food source at the moment. I think I've only got 2 tubs. There's actually a couple of cricket tubs up there as well. But yeah, when I was back in the garage at the old place, I think I peaked out at 6 tubs, and then I end up overrun with woodies, and most of them were in the garage and not in the tubs anyway. So yeah, they're good food source. We've had a few people jumping in. So hey guys, just in the chat there. Looks like Ryan Cox is stirring you up from America, Daz. Brian's just said, morning from America again, though that Darren guy is no good. He just drops pictures of his carpets in the NPR chat and makes us all jealous in the States.
Sorry, Ryan. Sorry.
Yeah.
Got to share. Got to keep those friendly Americans across the sea there jealous. They had stuff to start off with. Now it's our turn.
Yeah, exactly. They're always good for a stir up too. Hey, Jace, it's always good.
That's right. Well, they kind of started the race with the morph carpets, and then obviously I think we've taken the lead now, especially with some of the stuff you're working with, Daz.
Definitely, I think so. We're a lot of stuff coming and being produced. A lot of things out here as well starting to turn up, and I think nowadays, if we go back 15, 20 years, it was just wild type stuff. Which is cool, don't get me wrong. I love all the wild type stuff as well. But now with the mutations and more people getting into it sort of thing, more people tend to look in a clutch for something different. Whereas like a story I have, Tremaine Anderson, when he first bred gelatins many, many years ago, had them first advertising. There was one real freaky one. It was obviously a random anomaly in a clutch. And he did the clutch half with Tim Mensforth down at URS. And this weird thing come out from what Tim told me. He goes, Tremaine goes, who'd want this thing? This doesn't look anything like a gelatin. I don't want it, and send it down to Tim. So I think it never proved anything out. I actually have photos of the animals, of gorgeous looking gelatin, all weirdly patterned and striped and stuff. Never produced anything. But I think nowadays when people see that anomaly in a clutch, people are more aware of that's different. That's something new, and now they're holding it back, and now they're starting to work with it, and they're trying to see if it's something genetically inheritable that they can reproduce, or whether they're just anomalies. And I mean, that happens. We get weird stuff all the time. You look at chimeras and paradox and things like that. So I think a lot more people are aware, and therefore we're starting to see more mutations across the board in a lot of different species now, which is cool, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And you're seeing a lot in Antaresia recently, I'm finding. According to Facebook anyway, that I'm saying. Yeah. Actually, Darren in the chat here, Darren Boswell, he's proven out a whole bunch of freaky things down there. Yeah, that's kind of a little bit of a good segue. I know it's a little bit further down the line, but we might have to get stuck into some silver pepper talk, just because that's something that obviously you're super well known for that. And yeah, do you want to just give our listeners and our viewers a bit of a rundown about how that kind of ended up popping out all those years ago?
Sure. It's quite a funny story, actually, because it started with a diamond python. So back in, when the hatch, so it would have been 05, I think. I had a friend who had these 2 Murray darlings, and I hadn't kept Murrays at that point in time, and I'd kind of been looking around. I really liked them. I thought they were nice. They were a placid animal and quite a nice-looking animal, in my opinion. And she lived in Sydney. She goes, I don't really want them. I'm looking for something I can put in the aviary. She had a bird aviary outside. And I said, well, look, I got a diamond here. I said, you want to do a swap? It was kind of, in terms of value, they were fairly similar sort of thing. And she goes, that'd be awesome. So I got these Murrays. I were a bit undersized at 12 months. So I just gave them a good feeding. And at 2.5, I bred them. And in 07, I hatched, 3, obviously, silver peppers, but these 3 unusual snakes in the first clutch. And I knew literally nothing about genetics. I didn't know what recessive was or incomplete dominance or any of that sort of stuff. Had absolutely no idea. And I actually made a post on Aussie Pet and Reptiles back in the day saying, is this a new MD mutation with question marks? Albino Darwins were pretty much the only thing we had at the time. And Simon Stone actually messaged me because he'd been working with Jags and was like, how do you know they're Murrays? And I'm like, well, here's the photos of the adults. Like, what else would they be? There's nothing else. They're like pure MDs. And, so then I had to go on this journey of understanding genetics and, why. Like, what's recessive? I don't get all this. And I had a mate try and explain it to me. He was talking to me, and I think I got more confused for the conversation. And I struggled with it for a few years. And finally I was reading something, might have been one of the ball python books or something I've got. And suddenly the coin just dropped. Suddenly I went, oh, I understand now how this works. And once I got my head around that, I was able to then work out, what I needed to do in terms to prove it out. So when that first hatch, one had a defective epiglottis and couldn't tongue flicker at all. That animal was force-fed for, 8 months, 9 months, something like that, 7 or 8 months off the top of my head. And it showed zero interest in wanting to feed. So every time before I would force feed, I would offer it a food, nothing, no strike response, no nothing. Obviously couldn't smell the food because its tongue wouldn't. You'd open its jaw up. If you actually opened its jaw up, it had a hole in the side, and then its tongue would poke out, like a dog would out the side. And I ended up making the decision that if it's already got a deformity, if I did pursue force feeding and getting it to size, would that be the best thing for the snake? And I kind of come to the decision like this thing wouldn't survive in the wild, so I ended up getting it euthanized, having it euthanized, which left me two. One would not feed at all, no matter what I tried. It would occasionally take a feed and then it wouldn't eat for 4 times. The other one, I'd battled depression quite severely back at this point in time. Wasn't mentally well, but I'd gone to Anthony Stimson's show, his first one that he had at Homebush at that point in time, and I took one of them there on display. When I got home, chucked in the drawer, didn't think any of it, and it escaped. It got out, didn't have the drawer shut properly or whatever. I found that because I think that show was in May off the top of my head, which is winter out here. So that snake, when I found it 4 months later, was bad canker, mouth rot, obviously, RI. It went to the vets. I took that out to Michelle Daly out at Richmond, and she literally kept it there for a month trying to, get it back on track, and it eventually succumbed. And then I had the one left over which wouldn't feed. So the original parents, it's a fun story, this. The original parents that produced the silver peppers the first year round, I put them on display at Stimo's first show in 2007. It was the first time we had a reptile show in New South Wales where we could actually sell reptiles at the time. So I had a display and had my reptiles there for show and to sell. I had the adults for the Murrays there, the whole lot. Brought them home that season, cooled them down, witnessed several matings, never produced a clutch. Scratched my head and thought, well, maybe it's just one of those things, the stress of the show, being on display for 3 days, something like that. Following season, came into breeding season again. It was just starting to cool down. I looked at the female and she had a puffy throat. I thought, oh, no, don't tell me she got an RI. Didn't make any sense. She was in an identical enclosure to the male. When I took her out to have a better look at her, I noticed these blisters down the side of the body. So once again, I rang Michelle and said, oh, have you ever seen this? She goes, oh, I have. It's generally not good. She goes, I'll come out, I'll take a biopsy and I'll have a look. So she came out, she syringed, lanced one open. There was some watered down blood came out of the blisters. She took a sample, went away. She goes, oh, bad news. There's cancer cells in the blood. She goes, it's got cancer. So I'm like, and there's no treating it, unfortunately, in reptiles. So she took it, euthanized it. She actually did it to a vet class she was doing at the time, and there was 13 tumours in that female. And she said at that point in time, the largest one appeared to be was on the ovaries, and she thinks that was the reason why, despite 6 or 7 lockups a season previously, she just wasn't capable of producing eggs. So I lost her. So that means I still have the dad, the boy. I still have. He's cruising in there in the front room. So that left me with one girl, and she wouldn't eat. So it then got to 2012. So I think she was like 4 years old. She weighed 300 grams. So for those aren't familiar, that's like a adult children's python sort of thing, maybe even a bit smaller. Wasn't big, wouldn't eat. And I walked into the room one day, and she was in a vision tub. I tried her in all sorts of things, didn't make any difference. So I actually got the pups and I just killed her. I just put her in the antaresia rack with everything else and just killed her with everything else and ignored her and never touched her. And I walked in through the room and past the rack, and I heard this bang. And I went, oh, someone's hungry. And I'm looking around thinking, what was that? Not expecting it was her. And it was her. She was looking for food. So I was breeding my own rats and mice. So I ran straight in, tapped a rat on the head, opened a drop, and she smashed it. And I'm like, finally, 4 years of torture like this. This was the last snake. So I'd lost the mum, lost the other two, literally only had the dad and this female. And, offered her a feed. So she then went it was probably about 5 months, went from 300 grams to 1.8 kilos. To say I fed her was an understatement. I'm like, you want food? You're going to get it. And every time I went down there, I'm like, you hungry? Obviously, if you know how to, I suppose you could call it power feeding, if you know how to do it properly and everything, and get the female used to that sort of food intake and the temperature's right, you can really pump food into them. And she just grew. And I finally paired her back to the dad at that point in time. And so it would have been 2011. So 2012, she finally laid a clutch. This project that was literally on death's door, one error, and I could have been back another decade. So I finally got a clutch. And then when that hatched, she dropped 12 or 13. I hatched 8, and there were 6 peppers and 2 wild types. And I'm like, at that point in time, I'm like, okay, it's only taken her forever and a day. But at that point in time, I knew there was something genetic going on. It pointed, I believed all the way along it was recessive, but, it's all right to prove the gene, but you also need to prove against it. So I needed to outcross. And then, once all they got up to size, it gave me the ability to start then outcrossing into Jags and Zebs and Xanthics and albinos and other things. And once they all started to hatch, and you're hatching all wild types, you go, right, okay, it's now that I think I did 5 clutches in one season. It was Jags and albinos and pepper to pepper. The first time I did pepper to pepper, and ticked all the recessive trait boxes. And it was like, I think I danced around the room for a good hour or so, like, yes, finally, all these years. But it was a long project and very, very close to being a dead project. Like, really, at any point in time, something could have gone wrong, could have lost the other girl, something happened to the dad or whatever. But mate, he's a trooper. He's probably a bit lonely. He hasn't had a girlfriend for many, many years since his original wife passed away. But he's still there. So he'd be, when was that? It was probably, I think I picked him up in 2005, I think it was. So he's at least, so he's probably 16, 17 years old now. So
were the mother and father clutch pair?
Well, that was another fun part of the story, because the person I got them from never kept, back in the day, we used to have a book we used to fill out and send to national parks. She never kept any of the sheets. So I used to always keep mine back in the day. So I said, when these hatched out, I went to her and said, hey, look, where'd these animals come from? I don't know. Someone I bought it from the AHS. I'm like, who'd you buy them from? I need to know. Like, I want to try and trace these animals. I don't know. I can't remember. Or can you look on your logbooks, that you sent in? Oh, no, I don't keep those. I throw them all in the bin. So to this day, I have no idea who bred them, where they come from. She said she bought the 2 from the same person. So I assume that they are clutch mates. They might not be. One, the girl is very typical of like the Mount Gammon type style MD sort of thing. A lot of brown and everything. Really, really nice. Whereas the dad's more bluey grey. So they're very, obviously MDs, but very, very different in appearance. So, but I mean, that can just be polygenic variation within the clutch. So not knowing what the parents were, so to speak. But so no idea where they come from, who bred them, anything, which is really disappointing, because it would really be nice to know and go back to the person that had them and say, hey, have you ever hatched anything out unusual or different, or was it just lucky? So talk about being one of the luckiest guys in the hobby, I reckon.
Definitely.
Like that proves out. Yeah. That's pretty much the story.
What did the mode of inheritance turn out to be for the
recessive?
Recessive.
Recessive. So it's a proven recessive trait. there's still some things I'm working on. So anybody that's kind of seen the silver peppers, they've got a black eye, solid black eye, and the albinos have a solid red eye. But I do see in wild types the same black eye. Not all of them, but just every now and then. And often the patterning's sometimes slightly different. And I kind of look at it and think, well, I'd say with the pepper patterning that the eye is obviously linked, the black eye is obviously linked to the gene. Like I have zebras that have black eyes that aren't related at all. So, and then I see some wild types. But I'm curious, hopefully next season I'll have some of these, in brackets, wild type looking snakes with the black eyes to go back over a pepper. So hopefully I'll kind of answer some more questions there and find out what's going on. So there's some huge variation coming through with the double het type stuff and everything. So and absolutely placid animals to work with as well, which makes it really nice. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they're definitely stunning. I was just flicking through your Instagram before. They're probably one of my favorite morphs, I think, in carpets.
Yeah, it's nice that it's such an untouched morph. And it was really hard during the proving stage. People go, oh, so what's this look like? I'm like, mate, they don't exist. You look at an albino granite, for example, or albino zebjags years ago, and you could Google it, and they had it in the States. You can look up and you go, oh, I know what a granite exanthe or exanthe granite jag is going to look like or whatever. I can't look up a albino pepper. I can't look up a granite pepper or, what's a pepper jag? Well, I don't know. I do now, but back then it was like, I don't know. So it was really hard on some of the pairings I did to kind of identify the animals in it. And now that I've actually got a few clutches out and I can see that, okay, all the peppers are having this black eye or the albinos have this solid red eye. But then someone mentioned the other day, she goes, oh, if you had a moon glow, and that was with a pepper, so you had a moon glow pepper, for example, what would the eye colour be? And I'm like, I don't know. Because obviously moon glows and snows have that, white, pinkish eye sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So, the thought in the back of your head, imagine having a moon glow, even though it'd be a moon glow pepper, I suppose, being a white snake, but then having just a red eye, be like a red-eyed Lucy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's like no idea. The caramel peppers I have black eyes. The pepper jags have black eyes. The albino peppers have red eyes. Everything has black eyes. So yeah, it's so much untouched territory yet.
It's still very early days for it.
Yeah, 100%. There's not a lot out there. Not a lot of people. Oh, there's a few out there, but not a lot of people ride into it. Like it's taking. Obviously, when you make your first genetic combination. So if you take a pepper and you put it within, let's say, exanthic, for argument's sake, you've got to grow those babies up, and then you've got your double hets. So by the time they get a pepper at a hatchie, they grow it up for a couple of years. Then they've got to grow those babies up for another couple of years, assuming you're successful in your pairings. And then you've got to hope with a double recessive, it's a 1 in 16 chance of getting an exanthic pepper out. So then you've got to hope odds are on your side and you actually get that visual animal as well. So it's not, with an incomplete dominant mutation, a zebra or jag, you only need a zebra, and you can get that showing up in the next clutch because it's a visible trait. So with a recessive, it takes so much longer. And I think give it a few more years, there's plenty of combination stuff out there. I think you're really going to see some cool stuff, I reckon. That's not that I'm biased at all.
I think you're allowed to be. Yeah. So Darren Boswell's just brought up a pretty good little comment here that I'll throw up here, and he's basically just said, I reckon your pure Murray-Darling silver peppers are the best carpet morph, Darren. Make sure to keep some pure ones going. So that's a good question. Have you definitely got a nice pure line there?
Yeah, 100%. It was one thing. It's amazing how many people, are like, oh, throw it in this and throw it in that and use all these combinations, which is great. But I always like, going back to say, I still love my wild types. So I still like to keep pure lines of stuff. So even to the point that when I started doing all the outcrosses were done with the male silver peppers. So the female peppers that I had and the het female peppers that I had only saw another pepper. So I never, because you can have the issues with retained sperm. I'm not sure if I've not sure if that is something that can happen when you put a fresh male, for example. So I don't know. But just to take that anomaly out of the equation, I never used anything over my female peppers unless they were pure peppers. So that was it. And then the boys did all the legwork.
That's a good idea.
So they went into the Jags, and it wasn't until the only one I did, which was after I'd kind of made the pure stuff and some of the hets, was I had a ghost male, a caramel exanthic coastal from Wayne Lark's line. And that was the first time I'd actually put. Oh, no, it was the second time. I tell a lie. Albino male over a female, and that same female I put the exanthic male over the following season. So the one girl. But so I actually have a clutch cooking. So I haven't done pures for a couple of seasons. It's obviously trying to get some genetic combinations going. So this season I was pretty determined to just put one of my male pepper boys over one of the pure het girls. So there's a clutch baking at the moment. So I'll hold back a few more and keep the line going. You've got to have the pure stuff. It's amazing how many people want the pure stuff, which is good. It's
the
nice.
patterning on those pures is awesome. Like it doesn't take away the coloring that they have. So it just kind of gives them like an extra element to the pattern. Yeah,
they do. They also get if remind me later if you want some photos for your pages, I'll dig some out. But they also have this ghosting appearance. I don't know if you've ever seen roughies, how they'll change, or Ghost Children's, they get the brown and they get that silvery grey. I mean, the peppers will do the same thing. You'll go there some days and you think, geez, I shouldn't. It's not that they look crappy, but they look crappy than when they look good, if that makes sense. So they still look good. But you open the drawer and think, you're looking average today, and you shut the drawer. And other times you go back and it's like they're just glowing. The melanin drops out, the silvers pick up, and they're much brighter. That's usually when I take photos of them, because it's like, ooh, that looks good. Try to get a decent photo. So they do. And I had a couple of photos for a talk I did at the one of the reptile societies years ago, the same snake, and you would swear they were two different animals. Just one's like almost completely ghosted up the side, hardly any melanin in it whatsoever. And then the other photo, all down the back, it's all, the speckling they get, I suppose you could call it, is quite dark and quite pronounced.
Yeah.
No one, anybody wondering what caused that, I have no idea. I've asked all sorts of people here and overseas and everything, and some say it's possibly to do with food and the blood cells. Some say it might be just the animal's content and happy, just it's cool and chilled. I don't know. So if anybody knows, I'd love to know the reason why they do it. But it's the most I've seen in any of the pythons that I work with that actually do it. So it's very cool to see, though. I love it.
It's almost a little bit similar to the way that like geckos change color over nighttime and stuff as well. Jason, correct me if I'm wrong here, Jason, but do you know if anybody's figured that out with why geckos do it?
I haven't heard. I had a chat with I can't remember who it was. I think it was Ursula years ago about it. But yeah, I don't think anyone really knows why. Because your leaf tails change. Like you probably just looked at your leaf tails then. That's probably what you were looking at.
But Castor and Owie, yeah.
Oh yeah, there you go. Right. But they change color. Like especially, I find it was also temperature related as well.
Yeah,
the colder they were, the more they'd change color. I think maybe it's something to do with trying to get heat, so they go that little bit darker to to warm up quicker, and then once they were reach temperature, they change color, and then that way they can not get too hot. Because I noticed with the strophs as well, you find it with your Ciliaris, like your brown and yellow ones, they'll change to that grey and orange. But I think it all depends on nighttime and heat and that. So of a nighttime, they're not trying to get hot because there's no sun to get hot, so they'll change color and do that kind of thing. But that's all I can think of really, because I mean if you think of your roughies as well, they change color at nighttime. So
yeah these are the same. It's always at nighttime when they're looking their best, so to speak. It's like they put on their formals for dinner.
It's like look at me now, I look really good.
Check me out, baby.
But I find the lighter colors always look better for some reason in the geckos anyway. Not so actually the roughies look pretty good in the lighter colors too, but
yeah, I'm a bit of a fan for the lighter colours. Always like the lighter coloured stuff. So I think it's just a point of difference.
I definitely like it on the geckos. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I think the roughies, I don't mind them, the darker shade personally.
Yeah, I like the contrast between the cream and the brown, but
yeah,
but no, definitely the geckos for sure.
Yeah, I had I was saying before, I had Oldura Carsanawi quite a few years ago, and kind of went through the gecko phase. Had Amy and Levis and other things. And don't get me wrong, I love geckos. I just like every time you go look at them, they're out at night time, and I'm like, it's pretty boring. I love them. Like, don't get me wrong, they're absolutely cool, and you know, I bred them all. And the only one I didn't breed were the Carsanawis, and I actually had them. Decided, you know, they're just not for me. I thought I'll pass them on. I actually sold them gravid, so I could actually see the eggs in there. So it was a trio, it was a male and 2 girls, and both girls were gravid. You see the 2 white eggs in it. And I said to the guy I bought them from, I think it was like $600 or something other for the trio back at the day. I think I had him for a bit more, but he's like, oh, you know, give me a price. I can't remember for the life of me who it was. And of course, they got like the nice yellow and probably a blue grey and then the black bandings and sort of thing on them. And finally, he was like, oh, I'll come down this weekend and I'll come down next week. And it kind of got delayed over a couple of weeks. And by the time he picked them up, they were like ready to drop. Yeah. And me being me, can't do the wrong thing. I almost wanted to pick up the phone and say, oh, mate, I can't make it this weekend. Can you come next weekend? Because they were like ready to drop. You can see how big the eggs were. And I thought, no, I can't do the wrong thing. So I sold them to him, messaging me a week later and goes, oh, they dropped eggs. I'm like, yeah, I know. So anyway, they hatched out and he sent me a message. He goes, have you bred these guys before? I'm like, no, I haven't. I said, I was going to keep them and work with them, but decided I'd pass them on. And he goes, check these out. They're all hypos. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, there's no black in any of them. He goes, they're awesome. So when he hatched me out, there was just no black. It was all just like all pastel yellow and like that bluey greyish colour they had.
Yep. Wow.
And he sold them for $600 each. He goes, oh, I'm cheering. He goes, thanks. He sold 2 and kept 2. I'm like, oh well, win some and lose some. What do you do?
That's right. You won out with the silver peppers. So
yeah, that's it. And the other one I had, which was cool, which I'm not sure where they ended up, were pink amii. So,
nice.
Yeah, I had some amii. I actually worked in conjunction with a mate of mine. So I bought the amii, and he goes, oh, I've always wanted some. And I'm like, well, here you go. You take them. I said, you can look after him because he bred his own crickets and that as well. And I said, if you breed them, we'll go halves. I said, simple. That way you don't have to buy any. I've got them. So he bred them. We had a few clutches and sold them on. So I ended up selling the adult trio to a mate. And then I had what happened to be a trio that I'd held back. And as I said, I decided I was going to get out of geckos. So I actually had them at the show I was talking about at Homebush there with Anthony Stimson, and I sold them to another mate. So he grew them up and he bred them, and he goes, oh, did you ever produce any pink amii? And I'm like, no, they're probably more a pastely orangey colour. No, like pink amii. I'm like, well, no, not really. Like thinking, maybe my vision and his vision's different. He goes, no, check this out. Sent me a photo, and they're like baby, like pink jelly beans. Like they were just pink. And I'm like, no, damn it, I've sold something else. Anyway, the adults that were sold, my mate sold them to another friend. She actually messaged him with the same question. Oh, have you guys ever produced any pink ones? We're like, no, we've never seen. So she sent a photo as well. She had pink ones as well. But they never bred them, and I don't know where they ended up. So I tried chasing them, and one had dramas, and one person that bought them, they were more just pets, so I didn't really breed with them. And my mate ended up selling them off, unbeknownst to me. But yeah, I was like, oh, that would have been cool if I'd only known. I would have kept them back and tried proving them out. But yeah, but the photo was unbelievable. If you've ever seen the baby amii, they're on like a orangey browny colour, and these were like just pink, like a jelly bean pink sort of colour.
Wow.
I got a photo of that around somewhere on a hard drive somewhere as well. But yeah, it was like the things you do. So since those 2 occasions, now anything I breed, I always hold something back. Yeah. Always. So if something weird and unusual pops out, I'm thinking, well, I've still got that line, so I can still work it. So it's been a habit ever since. hence all this.
Yeah.
Can't breed anything without holding it all back.
So, what kind of numbers are you actually working with these days, if you don't mind me asking, or if you're not comfortable putting it out there, don't. But
no, that's fine. So, when I had a warehouse for a while, and that got sold, unfortunately, so I had to move back. So when I moved back home, it was in the vicinity of 570, give or take, and then come April, so April this year, I think I was in the mid 470s. So I obviously sold some hatchies and stuff, and I think prior to any eggs hatching, I would have been high 300s probably. So all the white melamine stuff there, that's all adults. There's a whole front room. Front room's got 3 python racks, like vision stuff. So he's got 3 python racks, 3 CV70s, and 2 V35s, and that's all adults in there. So it's like, what's that? 24 plus 33 plus 44, whatever that is. something like that, you can do maths. So, and that's just the front room. And then I've got all this down here. There's another 2 just right beside me here. That's another 2 CB70s. There's another 22 adults there. And then all the white stuff over there behind me, that's all adults down there as well. There's even a couple of, I've got some Barkley low-cal stimmies just here where the yellow labels are at the top. And they're actually quite small. So, and they breed in there. So there's even some adults here behind me. So, and then in another part of the house, there's hatchie racks. Wife's not overly happy, but yeah, I had no choice. I was so buried into, making genetic combinations that when you've got stuff, particularly with the pepper where you've got, in essence, world first type stuff, I didn't want to part with it. So when I made albino over pepper, I kept all the double hets. So I didn't breed them all, but I kept them all because I wanted to be, keep myself, in front of the game, I guess, because that's what it becomes eventually. Everyone trying to beat you to the punch. And, I've sold some few off since then and some other stuff and everything. But it's a constant. So now that I've got albino peppers up to size, hopefully for this coming season, then you throw another genetic trait at it. So finally you get something visual, and then you might say, I might put a ghost zebra, which a caramel xanthic zebra. So I might put that into the albino pepper, which will give me a 5-gene combination. So what do? You're going to go, okay, I need to keep all these. So, and so you can have the chance of making more stuff down the track. So, and then it's just hold back. But even with your wild type stuff, I do the same thing because it's how you better your lines. Whether it's a striped jungle, a breadlie, a diamond, doesn't matter what it is. If you can put them together and hold back a few, it secures your lineage. So you never know what happens. Animals develop tumor. I had a gelatin male. He was probably 4, 5.5. I think he had produced 2 clutches. I opened the drawer for this. I knew he's not looking for a feed. Didn't think any of it. He might have been in shed. Next time, knocked back a feed. Next week, I thought I better just check. Opened up, swollen heart, died 2 weeks later. It happens. Had a black and gold jungle. Well, my son actually saw and goes, Dad, I think the snake's sick, all its mouth swollen. I'm like, oh, surely it's not an RI. But no, I took it out to Robert Johnson before I retired, and he'd had cancer. But it all around the mouth was all just swollen up like a balloon. And I'm like, is it a common thing? Do you see it very often? And he just went over to his laptop and just scrolled through hundreds of photos. He goes, we see it all the time, that sort of stuff. So, So by holding a couple back, if you've just got a pair and you sell all the babies and you lose one, you've either got to go find another one. And, with lizards and that's not always easy, particularly with hard-to-sex things like monitors. Yeah. You lose your female or a boy, and then you got to go hunt around another one. So I've always, if I can keep back at least another pair or trio, or depending on what it is, I'll keep back more. But always try to, hold back for at least 6 months, and then you can pick the best. You pick the nicest colours, and doesn't matter what the line is, doesn't matter what the animal is. Whatever. When I say the best, whatever you like. So and then you end up with too many animals.
Well, that's me with Gil and I, and that's why I'm going to be keeping a few of these greens back as well, much to my wife's dismay. She's going, no, we need to sell them and get a new car. I'm like, no.
Yeah,
I'm keeping before. 5 of these things. You know?
Oh, I would too, mate. 100%. I would for sure, definitely.
Yeah.
Very
so,
cool.
Darren Boswell brought up a pretty good point here. Obviously, you are pretty rack heavy there just because of the high numbers that you've got. Darren's just asked, do you ever wrestle with the limited space in those tubs with the adults? I guess it's hard with such a big collection.
Yeah, I tend to try to keep, so like in that rack beside me, I tend to try and keep the males. So all my males will be in the 70s. The big python tubs will be the biggest of the girls. So, and some of those girls are huge, and they have tons of room. I kept a adult pair of 2 adult female bredli, and they were, mate, I weighed them. They're like 8-9 kilos. They were monsters. They were big 9-foot bredli girls in python racks, and mate, they just loved it. Just perfect. So it is a struggle, and I look beside yourself up there, Luke, at your glass fronted enclosures, and before I actually had to move home, I think I binned probably best part of 10 4x2x2s that I used to have down in the warehouse, but I had 110 square meters down there compared to trying to shove everything into your house, and it just became a necessity rather than a want, I guess. Like to keep the animals happy, and they're happy in there. I mean, they do everything they need to do. They get fed, they get clean, they get looked after, they breed, they produce eggs, so I can't say that they're unhappy. Certainly, if money wasn't the option and I had the space, I'd certainly really enjoy having particularly the adult girls in glass-fronted enclosures like the ones over that you can see behind me there. So I've got a few there. And mainly, one, to give them a bit of room and a bit of stretching space and a bit of exercise and that, but also for breeding. I've so many times I've opened up one of the python drawers during breeding season, and the male's been spurring, and suddenly it spooks them. And suddenly they go, I've actually, the worst I've had was a male was actually just locking in with the girl, and he retracted and took off, panicked around the enclosure. And so whereas when you've got something glass fronted, you can walk past and go, oh yeah, that looks good, and just walk away and turn the light off and not disturb them at all. So I do miss it. If I had the opportunity or the space and, a massive warehouse or a shed or something to set it up the way I wanted to, all the girls and probably even some of the nicer boys I would have in, say 4x2x2s. I'd probably actually go 5 foot by 2 foot deep, but I'd probably go a little bit lower, maybe 400 high or 450 high. And then I'd have a ceramic heater down one end with a divider, maybe just 30 mils out, a foot out with a gap in from the glass to a board. So I'd make it look like a little hot box. Yeah. And then the other side, I'd put a branch in so they can come out to the cool side and crawl around. But, I've probably got 100 adult carpets. So I do a big warehouse. So it's not really viable. So I do. But I think in some cases, racks are actually better for some species. I think they're a more secure, happy place where they're not as freaked out. Like I've had like Palmerston jungles in the past. They used to be over in those white melamine enclosures behind me, and you couldn't turn light on and walk past them. But you just, as soon as you walk past, bang, bang, they just smash in the glass. End up having to tie paper over top, move them, put them in the tubs, right as rain. Completely de-stressed. They feed and everything, they do everything right, but just you don't want your snake smashing its head, full force onto a glass pane every time you walk past. Can't be good for the animal. They probably can't see that it's a sheet of glass there in front when they're trying to rip your face off. So I think it's a bit of balance. So in my opinion, I would rather have a few more display enclosures. I've got some I'm in the process of setting up, but space is very limited. And my wife's not happy.
Not to mention the fact that like enclosures like this take a hell of a lot more juice to run. Like it's a lot different to just running a heat cord under a few racks or whatever like that. It's a lot more expensive with physical light globes and ceramic heat emitters and all that sort of gear on them.
Oh, definitely. You can put an 80-watt heat cord to some of these things and, keep 60 snakes warm.
That's right.
As opposed to a 60 or 100-watt ceramic in one enclosure for one snake. So, and then thermostats as well. Yeah,
exactly. That's another like wasted power as well. But Obviously, it looks like Vision racks are choice there as well.
Well, the actual melamine ones over there with the Bell's tubs, I built probably. Oh, I actually have photos of me somewhere other in 2004 building them. So I've made them for a while. So they're pretty old. I actually have, at the time I had my own business distributing for Tim at URS. So I was getting microclimate heat mats like cheaper than anything else. And there wasn't many heat cords around then. So they all sit on microclimate heat mats. But when I got the opportunity, actually the first Vision rack I bought was from a guy, Jason Boyes, I think he was one of the first to import them at one of Anthony's shows, might have been 2008 or 7 or something like that. I bought a V35 for my Antaresia, and I still have it. And I love them for two factors. One, they're quite sturdy. I like the ventilation in them.
Yeah.
But also the resale. When you build something in melamine, it's got a time limit. It doesn't matter. Like if you go, you might be able to see like on the bottom of the glass one there, you can see a little dark strip between the tubs and the thing because it's gone and had a massive crap in the corner. Even though I've sealed it all with Sikaflex back in the day, an enclosure that's 15, 16 years old, it wears away. The melamine gets worn and everything, and it's actually soaked in the corner, and the actual cover on the edge of the melamine's now starting to peel off. So they've got to get trashed soon. So with these guys, they last forever. You can pull them apart. So if you buy one from somebody, whether they've had a virus in their collection or not, makes no difference because you can pull them apart. So it's all plastic other than the rods that hold it together. You can soak it all in plastic. You can F10 it, bleach it, leave it out in the sun for a week, do whatever you need to do, and put it all back together, and it's like new. Like I said, the one I've got was, must have been 07 or 08 I bought it, so I've had it for a long time. And all right, it's dusty at the front. I clean it every now and then, but it still does the job. Same heat cord, everything doesn't change at all. The original brown heat cords they used to come with.
Yeah.
So and I do when I kind of got that one. As I could afford, I would buy more. And I actually have a Python rack sitting here unused at the moment. And I've had people want to buy it, and I'm like, no, you can't get them anymore. They're so expensive to try to even bring into the country. So, I think I've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 of them, I think.
So pretty much the majority of the ones that came into Australia you've got.
Bought a few. I bought some from Jason, and then obviously when Steve Crawford was bringing them in, I bought a few from him as well, and then some that I've picked up through mates that have been selling them and stuff like that. And they're hard to get. I love them. I know there's some people that don't like them at all. But
nice tracks.
I find them really good. I wish someone would bring them back in the country and I'd get some more.
Yeah, it's funny. As soon as they come up for sale, they're sold almost instantly.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. And they're probably selling more secondhand now than what they were new because you can't get them. People are asking what they want from. I knew someone that was selling a Python rack for $3,000. Sold it apparently. I don't know whether he did a cheaper price, but I'm like, bloody hell. I think I bought 2 brand new from Steve with freight and everything. It was like 5.5.
Yeah.
I went for 2 racks, but they're good. I like them. I like them a lot.
They do look good too. I like the black.
Yeah, definitely. I actually wanted to redo all the melamine stuff in all black as well. Just, do all black enclosures, LED light stripping inside the enclosures. If I had them in display, I'd have the fake rock back walls and, get on the aspen bedding and all that sort of stuff and get back to something that's visually nice to look at. Like the racks are great and they serve a fantastic purpose, but I think walking in, and I know I've seen, I think it was Alex Leith up far north, New South Wales. Like he's done up his hurt room down below, and it's absolutely stunning. I just went, dude, come down and build me that. Yeah, it's just incredible. Like absolute credit to the bloke. He's the top guy as well. And when I saw his displays and setups and the timber and all the fake background, the fake rock backgrounds and all that sort of stuff, just unreal, and getting back to that is something I've got a plan to do at some point in time. But, I've got to see out the projects and stuff that I've got going at the moment. So one day.
Yeah. Well, that's it. You've got a lot on your plate, and at least you know where you want to go one day when you've kind of maybe you've burnt your course or something like that, and you can kind of go, you know what, I've done my bit for the hobby, and you can go back to that sort of
definitely
little kid in a candy shop sort of thing.
Yeah, as far as my wife's concerned, I've done my bit for the hobby 10 years ago. She's like, can I have my house back now?
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like every wife of a reptile keeper.
Oh,
except for maybe
I actually designed a. Sorry.
Yeah.
Except for maybe Ty Ivor. It's probably the other way around between those two.
Maybe Ty. Maybe I'll send my wife up there to Ty. Just convert my wife a little bit more.
Funny you say that. She was messaging me looking for stuff today.
There you go. I got to admit, my wife won't touch the snakes, so she'll help with cleaning. So if I take them out, she's an absolute workhorse. So if I take the stuff out, she'll help with the cleaning. So normally I'll take them out. She'll take the water bowl. I'll clean the tub and put it all back. But yeah, it won't touch them. But last year I spent a bit of time away traveling for work, and I wasn't home during hatching. So during the hatching season last year, I was away for 3 months.
Wow.
And stuff's hatching on the set. I said, you're going to have to feed these things. Like, I don't know what to do, And mate, she smashed it out, eh? Like, honestly, she saved so many snakes' lives, because if you hadn't have done it, I had really no one I could fall back on to help with so many animals. And and even this season now, I think I've hatched out about 50 ants or something at the moment. And I think I've got 5 feeding, and she's done all the rest. All the rest are feeding.
Wow.
And I'm like, I get a little bit impatient. Feed you, little bucker. And she sits there for hours and happily. But if they come out of the tub, it's a scream and a yell, and I've got to come put them back. But, normally when they're little, they're happy to just sit there and not do much. So, she's massive help in that department, that's for sure. I mean, anyone that's getting baby snakes to feed knows you sit there for hours. It's like it takes it, and then it's like freeze, don't move.
Yeah.
Unless you're lucky, you've got a.
Unless you're Luke and you just fluke it.
Yeah, feed chondros the day after they come out of the egg or whatever it was. Yeah.
And they've all eaten now, haven't they, Luke?
Yeah. And some have had two feeds already. Yeah. I've actually got to mark down. I'll probably go through later, but yeah, I need to mark down all the sheds because they've started shedding the last day or so. That's their first shed. But yeah, some of them already had 2 feeds.
Maybe you need to come down here, mate, and give me a few pointers.
Well, apparently maternal helps. Just saying. These things came out way bigger than what I was expecting them to, and I've seen a lot smaller chondros out there. So I don't know if that's helped somewhat, but there was absolutely nothing left in these eggs.
What do you do? What do you feed? What was your first go-to food? Did you try rat pups or like fuzzy mice or?
Pinky mice.
Oh, pinky mice. Okay, righty. Yep.
Pinky mice, no scenting, a little bit of teasing. A couple of them, I just kind of squeezed the nose and got a couple of drops of blood out. Just to make them smell a bit more funky. But that was it. Yeah, just kind of hitting them on that magic curve as well. You'd know more than most, but that kind of like curve just behind get the turnaround with the head. Yeah, that seems to trigger them pretty good. Yeah,
you get used to tricks when you've got lots to feed. Try that. If that doesn't work, try this. Oh, that worked. Yeah. Yeah. It's good. Oh, it's an unreal result, that's for sure.
Yeah, I was planning to put them in the incubator just so they'd just be consistent temperature for a while, but I ended up having more babies than I actually planned out of that clutch because I could only see 8 eggs. I'm like, I've got space because my incubator's only like this big, unlike yours. Yeah. But yeah, it was got them all in the rack, got them all feeding. Pretty stoked with it, to be honest. I just got to keep them humid for the time being.
Mate, awesome. That was the first. I think it was you and who else? Someone else actually maternally incubated a clutch of chondros this year as well. I can't remember.
Yeah, Matt Somerville did it pretty much the exact same time I did. So I'll say it again. Mine went 50 days, and his went 52. Both of us had 100% success rate with hatching. I got 12 out. He had 14 eggs, got a set of twins in there as well, so I ended up with 15 babies.
Wow, that's awesome. But, who says mother doesn't know best, eh?
Ever since that, I'm going, you know what? Bugger putting these things in the incubator anymore. I'll just let them do it.
Yeah, that's something I'm going to have a crack at next year. Getting setups right. Going to have a bit of a. So Peter Birch seems to be someone that's actually had quite a lot of success and has been doing it for quite a few years. So I'll certainly be hitting him up for a few pointers and tips to make sure just doing things right. I've seen the other side of it where it doesn't go right.
Yep.
As I mentioned, having been away from work, it was during that egg laying time and all that sort of stuff. And I lost a lot of clutches last year because the setups went right, and
Yep.
It wasn't a case that I'd intended them to maternally incubate. It was a simple case that when I was supposed to go away for work, constantly got delayed. Then it was like, you're going away next week. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, flight's on Friday, and this is like Monday. And I'm like, all I had time was to clean everything and pray. Couldn't even check if things were ovulating and things were gravid or what. Still had things paired together. I actually had to get Brent Smith from KHP Reptiles to actually come over and separate stuff that was paired because I was up in Darwin and flew out to Elko Island. Was there for 3 or 4 weeks, and then I went back to Darwin. They were going to fly me back home, but of course COVID. They're like, if we pay you, will you sit in Darwin and stay in a hotel room for a couple of weeks? I'm like, you're going to pay me to sit here? They're like, yeah. And he goes, then you can go to the next job, which was a place called Nooka. And I'm like, yeah, all right. So in Darwin, I sat for a bit over 3 weeks, I think. So, because they also had to pay me to come back and then pay for quarantine at the facility up there, Howard Springs and everything as well. So I was like, yeah, all right, chill, go down to Darwin. Pretty bad. It gets expensive when you're there by yourself, and you kind of go and pub's just around the corner, and
that's
right. Go out for dinner and a couple of beers, or down the oyster bar or something like that. So,
gets a bit boring too.
It did, mate. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It certainly did. Like I bought a laptop before I went, so I had Netflix and games and stuff to try to keep me occupied. But mate, there's not a lot to do in Darwin. Be all right for a holiday, but once you've been there and kind of seen most of the stuff to do, it's like, now what do I do? Same as yesterday. Walk across the road, go to the cafe shop. I actually discovered the gym where we were staying. So unbeknownst to me, the hotel where I stayed actually had a membership with the gym across the road. So when I found that, I've been there for a week and a half. I'm like, so I got up in the mornings, went over, hit the gym for an hour and a half or something or other, and just to keep fit for work. And came back and it's like, what do I do today? And it's like 32 degrees every day and stinking hot. And it's like, but here's what it is. What do you do?
You didn't get tempted to rent a car and pull a couple of all-nighters and go and search for an OP?
I did. I actually did a bit of herbing. I didn't quite go that far. I did have a car. The guys I work for said, here's our work kit. Do whatever you want with it. So I did do a few night herps and went out cruising around, but not familiar with the territory out there and kind of didn't really want to push my boundaries and not knowing, where to go with a 2-wheel drive ute, just had a Commodore ute. If I'd had a 4-wheel drive of sorts, I'd probably be a little bit more venturous and try to hit up a few bush tracks or dirt tracks or something like that. But I did go around. Did find some of the sites are on, did find a few cool critters, found a children's. I found a nice northern bluey on one of the trips, heaps of frogs, saltwater crocs, saw wild dingoes, saw wild buffalo, and so a lot of stuff was just cool to see. Like, it's probably nothing for those guys that live up there, but for me it was like, I'd love to see some dingoes. We saw a pack of dingoes, so that was pretty cool. And then to come around the corner on a dirt road at 140 k's an hour, and there's like wildebeest standing there. It's like, whoops, we better slow down. Dirt road, we're on dirt roads, not on a tarred road out in the middle of nowhere, because we were working in Aboriginal communities. So certainly an experience. Yeah,
it's like a different world up there. That's for sure,
mate. It is definitely a different world up there. One of the places we worked at, we're sidetracking here a little bit, we'll get back on topic. One of the places we worked at, we did 32 days straight. Wow. Average temperature was 42 degrees. So a cold day was 39 and hot was 46. Yeah. And that was like, no rain, there was a wind, but I think the wind was like 35 degrees.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And we're in, obviously, we're working on a construction site, so we're in longs and longs. So, long pants, work boots, long shirts, hard hats, all the stuff. And we're building water storage tanks. We actually just got an award for one of the tanks we built at Hermesburg, which is pretty cool. But yeah, we inside the tank was hitting, 60 degrees. We had a digital thermometer inside the tank, and it LCD screen, and it stopped working at 57.
Wow.
So, mate, drinking 10 to 12 litres of water a day.
Yeah.
Like, you can't keep it in yourself. Like, and you don't go to the toilet. Like,
you don't wee. No.
Just sweat.
Yeah, just crazy. An
Looking
experience.
forward to that.
Yeah. So we get back to snake talk.
Well, I brought it up because Jason and I are pretty much heading up that way in end of February, thereabouts. So
Yeah.
Jason hasn't been up there yet, so this is my third trip to the NT.
We did a job in Catherine, and we had to go up. Ended up being in bang smack middle of wet season. So the river that runs through Catherine there, whatever it is. It normally sits at about 3 to 4 meters down the bottom. We were there; it got to 26 meters. So it was 35 degrees, anything from 33 to 36 degrees Celsius every day, and humidity was like 100%. Like you would sit there in the shade. So it was overcast, and you'd sit under. We had a little tent we'd put up, or a little marquee we'd put up every day to put all our stuff under, and you would sit there under the cloud cover in the shade, and the sweat would just pour out of you. Like it's like working in a sauna. It's just, It is one experience. Catherine River. Thank you, Des. I thought it was. I wasn't sure. Yeah. Catherine River and Catherine, that makes sense, doesn't it? It was crazy.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Okay. So just to bring it back onto kind of topics, things, we're here to talk about breeding snakes. Did you want to just give us a bit of a rough rundown about how you kind of start out your breeding season, or what do you do leading up to breeding season, and then progress from there?
So breeding season for me starts now. So literally all the girls that are laying now, so I have a kind of a plan. So every season, probably come January, sort of early January, even now to January, I'll actually start looking at what I have, what's its size, what's going to be its size, and I'll start making a plan for what pairings I want to make. So if I want to look at making new combinations, or I just want to make it looking the same sort of stuff, I'll kind of work out where I'm going to go. And it starts with conditioning the girls. One thing I see a lot of people, you see posts and people go, oh, that's, too fat, it's overweight, or it's too skinny. And if you don't have good condition on your girls, you're going to struggle getting the clutch. Some will still produce a clutch. So obviously once they've laid a clutch, they're skin and bones. Like they really laying a big clutch, takes everything out of them. So as soon as they've laid a clutch, give them a few days. I mean, I see people, they take their snakes and bath them in yak milk and all sorts of stuff. And I literally, I don't wash them. I take them out. I clean their enclosure, clean their water bowl, give it a spray, new paper, and put the snake back in. Leave them a few days to settle down, and they start taking food like no tomorrow. So I always try to I'll feed the girls a lot heavier straight after breeding. So I'll give them one decent feed just to get their metabolism cranked up. So I don't pump them a big, massive meal. So I'll give them one jumbo rat or extra large rat for a big, large carpet. And I'll let that digest, and probably a week later I'll then offer them another one, and then I'll start to either increase the frequency to more than once a week, or double their feeds. So, when you're talking a 6 kilo female sort of thing, to give them, a 300 gram rat and such. So you give them 600 gram feeds. It's still not a massive feed. You're only talking 10% of body weight. So I'll try to pump them a little bit harder for the first few months or couple of months coming out of the breeding season to get that bit of condition and meat back on them. And then I will slow it down. So just through December, January, February, I'll just give them a regular feed. Boys will get fed. I'll normally give them a few feeds, same straight out of breeding season, and then I'll slow them down I'll just maintain their condition really. So it might be every 3 weeks, might be every 4 weeks, might be every 2 weeks. It's just random. It normally depends on the male. So then I'll get coming into probably towards end of February is when I'll actually pick up the feeding on the girls again. It's kind of a theory of mine. I think, I see people all the time, they'll go, oh, it's April, stop feeding your snakes. It's time to, let them, empty their intestine, so to speak, and don't feed them and hold off. Well, I don't agree with that. And the reason I don't agree with it is it could be warm for another 2 months. So if you look at this year, my stuff didn't start cooling till well into June. So you stop feeding in April, that's 2 months of feeding where they're still sitting in prime temperatures. They're still sitting at with a heat during the day. They're still burning energy. So I keep that feed up to them, and even if that means dropping from an extra large rat to a large rat. But I'll give them a feed every week. So I'll feed them every week up until I've started cycling. I see the boys are starting to cycle, and that's when I'll reassess the condition of the girls. If the girls have plenty of a condition, then at that point in time, I might go, well, boys are now off their food. They're ready for mating, so now I'll let the females go. So providing you're supplying a good heat during the day. So my daytime temps during the off season, through feeding season, that sort of stuff, is the same as in winter. So the daytime temps are the same. So providing they have that warmth, they can still digest whatever's in their gut. They can still digest, process, and even though the temps are getting cooler at night time. So giving them that feed, I think almost triggers them like, well, there's plenty of food around, everything's right, it's a good season, there's no reason for me not to want to produce a clutch. You stop feeding them, 2-3 months prior, suddenly go, well, hang on, I haven't had a feed for 2 months or 3 months. Now there's a male in here, they might lock up, but whether they produce a good solid clutch of 20 plus eggs or none at all, or a small clutch, I personally, and like I said, it's just my opinion and what I've seen over the years, I think can make a big difference. And I think keeping that food up, the females have the condition, they've got the weight, they need that bit of extra fat. The amount of calcium and, energy those females put into laying those clutches. And you'll see it in people that have smaller animals, like someone said to me, my Darwin's drop clutches are 27 and 28. Someone said, oh, are you sure they're pure? I'm like, yeah, they're pure. They're just big, healthy girls. They're not, like, oh, they're 5 foot and weigh 2 kilos. They're, probably verging 7 foot and probably weigh close to 6.5 kilos.
Yeah.
So, because they're fed appropriately. They're not fat. They're not obese. They're just big, healthy breeding females. So that's what kind of kicks me into season. I then come March, I'm normally monitoring all the females very closely, all the ants, carpets, everything. I'm monitoring all the girls and their weight and their condition. If I see something and I take them out and I think, geez, you need a little bit more meat on your bones, I'll give them a double feed next time, or I'll feed them a second one, maybe 4 days later or 5 days later to keep that feed on them. And then I allow them to cool when the weather cools down. So I find, like, it's not something I see many people talking about, but atmospheric pressure, cold fronts and that. I mean, they're really, in my opinion, very crucial to breeding and to have some success at breeding. And it got told to me many years ago by Brian Champion. For those that don't know Brian Champion, he's probably one of the nicest blokes I think I've ever met in the hobby, and probably one of the best chondro breeders I've ever met. And a champion bloke. And he said to me years ago when we were talking about breeding chondros, this would be early 2000, he goes, when there's a storm coming over, he goes, I just open the windows. And he goes, when I walk in that room, he goes, the chondros are all locked up. He goes, as soon as there's that pressure change, he goes, they know. And obviously being a top-end tropical type species, obviously that pressure system, and it's always stuck in my head. So once I know temperature's starting to get cold and we get a cold front push through or something like that, I'll do exactly the same thing. I'll open the doors. The enclosure temperatures will remain the same, as I said, during the day. But if it's cold during the day, I'll open the doors up. I'll let that cold air in. I'll open the windows up, let the cold air in. The snakes will feel that, and that will help cycle the snakes. And one of the first things I ever notice is usually a male Antaresia. And the first thing they'll do is go off their food. So you'll be going in doing your feeding as you would normally, checking the girls, and the boys will be like just pacing the enclosures. Offering the food, they come up, they look at it, they look away, they come back. You can rub their backs and they'll arch up and they'll look at it and they'll go away. And it's not that they don't want to eat, it's just not what they're looking for right now. They're looking for the girl that's in the drawer next door. So that's the very first thing that I notice, that when my animals start to change. And that's after we've probably had a good solid week of cold temperatures, probably in the 15-degree sort of brackets at night time, and it's starting to get down to that sort of coolness. Once I see that, that's when I will slow all my feeding down. So that could be the second week of June. It could be the, first week of May. So I don't fight the weather. There's no point arguing with nature. If it's 28 degrees all day, every day, what's the point of trying to cool your animals to sub 20 degrees at nighttime when you're not getting that temperature? So that'll be the first thing I notice. Once I notice those ants are going, they always seem to go sooner. That's when I'll notice the male carpets will start to do the same. They'll start to get more active in the enclosures. And I normally, before I start pairing anything with girls, I'll normally, not so much the ants, but with the Morelia, I'll actually start to combat the males. So I'll take a couple of boys and I'll throw them in together and just see what their reaction are. And I mean, you don't leave them in there. Don't chuck them in and go, I'm just going to go and have a coffee and watch a movie. You literally put them in there and you'll know if they're starting to cycle, mate, they're combating within no time whatsoever. And you don't need to leave them there to smash each other's brains out. Put them in. You'll soon hear them throwing coils at each other. You can open the drawer, pull them out. It's probably the best time of year for handling your snakes because they rarely bite at all during that time of year once they're cooled in the cycle. And then I'll normally give them a couple of weeks after that. So then I know that they're cycling. I can go, rightio, I'll reduce the temperatures at nighttime. I only aim for my temperatures at nighttime to get sub 20 degrees. So as long as the room itself is sub 20 degrees, so anything from 18 degrees is kind of where I like it to be. If I know that room's getting that cold, I know those animals are cycling. So I'll let my thermostats probably come down a few degrees. If you've got a room like my front one that's got quite a few animals in there, I'll actually use a timer and actually cut out some of the enclosures just to allow that heat to dissipate out of the room. It's a small room with a lot of stuff in it. So I'll open windows and do whatever I need to cool down. And then, I'll give them a few weeks and then I'll start introductions, depending on the species. So, things like Murrays, I find that some people say they go late. Mine normally go pretty early. So I'll normally start pairing them up. I'll start jungles. So I'll just start putting a lot of the Morelia together and then I'll monitor and see how they go. If I see reaction straight away, if I open the drawer and there's one here and one over there, I'm like, well, she's not ready yet or he's not ready yet. So I'll take them out. I'll use combating as a way to spur on excitement. So, if you pair C and I don't see any action together, I'll take another one of them, a good males. I'll put it in with the male and the female that I want to breed. I'll just introduce another male, and often that will stimulate the female. She's like, oh, the boys are fighting. Oh, that's good. Who's going to win? And that'll also stimulate the males as well. So you can take them out. And I've seen it to the point I've actually put them together, separated them, gone back in the room an hour later, and the male's locked up with the female after they've been there for 3 days and haven't done a thing. So once I've seen the lockup, I'll separate the boys, so from the girls. So I'll take the male out, throw him back in his drawer and give him a few days rest, just give him a break. And then if he's got multiple females, I'll then take him out and introduce him to another female. I'll normally leave him in there for 4 or 5 days, sort of thing, subject to if I see mating. If I've seen that lock up, then I'll take them out to give them a break. So give them a bit of a rest. And I pretty much repeat that for the whole season. If you've got a good male that doesn't need combating, I don't bother. It's only if I've got one that's, might be a young male, it's his first time, he's kind of keen but not sure, and sometimes he just needs a little bit of a fire up to get him, a little bit more vigorous with the girls, and find that generally works really, really well. I have used skins as well, like a fresh shed off another male. Sometimes they don't like the scent in there, but I find with the combat of putting in another boy, mate, they just get triggered straight away. It's like an instant response, and I just find that's what works for me. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I'll repeat that, and then I'll just keep an eye out for ovulations. And I got a lot of questions this season with people saying, oh, I saw my my pythons, whatever pair, mate, do I separate them? I'm like, no, just keep them together. Like, it only takes one mating to be successful, but there's nothing wrong with having 7 or 8. So until you're 100% certain you've seen that female ovulate, you'll often see a lot of people going, oh, I think my girl's ovulating. I look at it and go, it's probably just follicle development. It's probably not, full-on ovulation in some animals. So I'd always suggest, like, just keep them in there. I mean, you can keep them in there till she lays eggs. You'll generally know the female's going to be hiding in the corner, curled up, and she'll have nothing to do with the male, at all. Like, she's like, I'm done. I don't need you anymore. Take him away. But if you're not sure, just leave him in. If you, right up to the point of egg deposition, it's not really going to, she'll just go in the hide box, nesting box or whatever and do whatever. So, it's through season, and then once you've seen those ovulations, if you know what you're looking for, you can then separate your males and get your nesting boxes ready and get them in there. I just use sphagnum moss, moisten it up with some water, give it a good mash up, and nice big hole. And I normally put over the hot end of the enclosure. They normally shove them around and do whatever, and I just let them get settled. And the females will start going there. Some will belly up, some won't, and they'll start to twist and knock themselves up prior to egg deposition. And then they'll lay. So, talking about maternal incubation, that's something you want to try next year. So, got a couple of big nesting boxes for some of the big carpets. So, in the python racks, they fit in nice and they're plenty big enough. So, it's something you want to have a crack at this year, I think.
Yeah.
Get a bit more advice on it. And that's pretty much through the breeding season. Then it's just, once they're out, incubation. If you want to talk about incubation, how I do that, I can carry on.
Yeah, go for it. What
keep
type
running
of
with it.
are you running?
I ran out of space. I had a massive double door. Funny story. A mate of mine was a copper, and he used to work at in the city. And he rings me up and he goes, "Oh, we've got an old, it was like a forensics freezer, I guess." So like he said, "We've got this freezer at work." He goes, "Double doored, big insulated stainless thing." He goes, "Do you want it? They're chucking it out." I'm like, "Yeah, I love it." Sent me a phone. I'm like, "Yeah, sweet." So drive into the city, Surrey Hills or whatever it was, and the police gone in there with the trailer, and they mate, this thing weighed 15 tons. It was massive, weighed a ton. So they came out, forklift on them a trailer, which luckily I could offload it at work on the trailer. And so I'm picking up, and he's like, "Yeah," he goes, "Make sure you give it a good clean when you get home." I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a spray there. And he goes, "Oh, no, I'd get some bleach and I'd do this." I'm like, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "Yeah, it's our forensics freezer." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "Oh, no, it's had like sperm samples, dead body parts, organs, all sorts of stuff in there." And he goes, "Then when the freezer crapped itself," he goes, "half the stuff defrosted and there was fluid." I'm like, "Now you tell me, you could have told me that before picking it up, trying to slide it on the trailer and tie it down." So to say it sat out the front at work in the warehouse, and was like, I think I used about 50 litres of bleach and 13 bottles of F10 on it, and just gurned it out and left it there to soak. But so I had that one, which I ended up moving on, and then I had a couple of it would hold 21 clutches of carpets in a decent sized tub, so it was pretty good. And then what I have now is they're from Quirks, I think it is, and they're about 700 by 700 sort of thing, and 6 foot tall, double glazed glass front, like drinks fridge, commercial drinks type thing.
Yeah.
So I have 3 of those. So I had 2, and then I'm like, I know I've got at least another 8, 9, maybe 10 clutches to come. My incubators are full, and the mate Brett Smith at KHP is like, "I've got a spare incubator, Daz. You want to come get it?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do." And it's got 10 clutches in it. So if I didn't have that, there would have been no choice but to do some maternal incubation. So with my tubs, I mean, there's a lot of methods that work. I'm finding I actually use less and less water. So I've done, in the early days, used to do vermiculite 50-50 by weight with water. So 500 grams of vermiculite to 500 grams of water and mixed up. I then had a few problems with some of the eggs and didn't like them sitting in the wet vermiculite. So then I changed to the same vermiculite, but then I would put a dry bed of perlite on top, and then I would just sit my eggs on the dry bed of perlite. That worked. And then a few were saying overwater and use the water crystals and this sort of stuff. So I then gave that a crack. But what I found with some things that hatch, it's almost like they go into the crystals. They're a bit thirsty. They pip the eggs, they come out, they go down, "Oh, let's have a drink." And I just had these perfectly formed snakes hatching and dying. And I had no idea why, and it was the only thing I could put it to. Like, why is that just hatched? First one out of the egg. So, you know, it pips tonight and the next morning it's up, and then, you know, it's like dead a day later. And I put it down to possibly getting into the water crystals into the in underneath the trays, and them possibly having a drink. It wasn't all of them, but just occasionally you get like 3 dead ones in a clutch. I'm like, what's going on? So I cut that idea out, and now all I do is literally put not even enough water to cover the bottom of the container. So I literally just pour a bit on, the egg tray on top, and then the eggs on top. And often with some, if there's too much humidity in there, I've even taken clutches out 3 weeks into incubation, taken them out and completely dried the tub, poured the water out, the whole lot, left the eggs on the tray. Obviously just left the tray out, drained the tub, give it a wash, dry it all out, and just put the eggs back in the incubator, and it still develops humidity in the tub.
Yeah.
So I'm at the point next year I'm actually going to take like just a little capful and pour it in just to give it a little bit of humidity if they need it.
Have you thought of running maybe water just in your incubator instead?
Well, I reckon so. I run holes in the top of my incubation tub, so I just have a soldering iron hole in each corner, so 4 holes. And I actually ran out of incubation tubs. So I'm like, bloody hell, now what am I going to do? So I didn't have any more milk crates to cut up. So I'm like, I've got some, they're probably a 5-6 litre sort of tub that I actually have, that I take, you know, some of the older stuff when I go to the reptile shows to sell. I just put them in the containers and off they go. And I had it close and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put it in. Just put it in on the thing, no water, no tray, nothing. Put it in the incubator, walk in there 2 days later, and there's humidity on the sidewall of the tub. And there's nothing in there at all. And obviously I then panicked because I thought, oh shit, I hope there's not like water, you know, sitting on the floor of the tub and the eggs are sitting in it. So it's not the floor is dry, it's just a little bit of moisture on the sidewall. And I actually think because of those air holes that I have in the tubs, because there's quite a few incubation tubs, there's enough humidity evaporating out of that it's creating a bit of humidity in the incubator itself as well. Yeah. So I have heard of people like using trays of water and stuff like that, but I'm starting to think, you know, I mean, I've been doing it a while, and it's like every year it's like try something different. So this year I think I'll just try less water, and even maybe not no water, but very, very little in some, and I'll see how it goes. But, you know, water can be a big killer for eggs. You know, if you've got too much humidity and that water is dropping on top of the eggs or whatever, it's not good. So if I see humidity on the roof of the incubation tubs, I take them out, dry it, and I'll take the water out and I'll put them back in. Yeah. So, and that's what I do for incubation. And, you know, unfortunately you still lose eggs. Doesn't matter what you do. That's just the nature of the beast. You're dealing with nature. You know, once, you know, you've paired the animals, there's nothing you can do. You know, all you can do is, you know, tick all the boxes. Has your female got condition? Have you cooled enough? Have you, you know, the boy's ready to go, you know, paired up. Have they mated? She ovulated? You know, once they ovulate and that egg development starts, mate, what hatches it in, you know, a few months down the track, you have zero control over at all. So, you know,
I guess that's a good thing about having so many egg containers in that incubator as well, and having holes in each container, is you've got that buildup of humidity in the whole incubator itself. Whereas if you've just got one container in that incubator with a small amount of water, you might not have enough humidity. Yeah, because you've got so many, you've got like that big buildup of humidity.
Yeah, 100%.
And being such a good seal on that fridge door as well.
Yeah. I aerate the incubator as well in terms of because what I found was, going back to the big double-doored contaminated incubator that I used to have, was, you know, I had to double stack tubs. And then I'm like, if you're trying to aerate those tubs, you know, you're constantly pulling eggs out. And like, I had some people messaging me and they're like, you know, oh, here's my eggs laid and I'm canning it today and I'm canning it tomorrow and I'm canning, mate, leave the eggs alone. You know, if you want to candle them, I don't even bother candling anymore. Like, I used to candle every clutch. It's always cool. But now if they're in a nice clump, I literally take them up, put them in the tub, they're in the incubator and set and forget and don't touch them, you know. And I used to, with sealed lids, take them out, take the lid off, make sure there was some air exchange inside the tub itself. But when you've got them stacked on top of each other, and of course you've got double doors, so you've got a pillar in between, so you've got two sets, and then one in behind it means I have to take these two out to get to those two. And then I thought, you know what, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And that's when I went the air holes in, so then I could actually cross the tub, so to speak, because where the holes are in the tub, there's like a little shallow section in the lid of the tub. So I put the holes in there, then I can cross them over, and that allows all holes to breathe with the two tubs on top. So now I just literally grab the door and open and shut it a few times every couple of days, and that'll just drag that air in and out and just leave the door shut and go away. So, and just monitor the eggs, rather than take it out, waft it over. It's all right when you've got maybe only 2 or 3 clutches, but, like when there's lots. Yeah. So it's trying to make things, I mean, I don't mind hard work, but if I can do something easier, then
that's right.
I'll find an easier way to do it.
And that's more time you can spend on the animals that aren't incubating as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
Mike's muted, Luke.
Whoops.
It's hard to find good help, Chase, isn't it?
It's not episode like 33 or anything.
Nah.
Had a little bit of practice. So, because Jason kind of missed out on how many clutches you happened to hit this year, do you mind sharing with that, or is that a bit of a secret number for yourself?
I have kept it pretty quiet.
Okay, fair enough.
I have. It was a personal number. I was talking to Brent because obviously, as you know, Brent from KSP and myself have been doing egg cutting shows, and we kind of do it. Kind of 2 reasons we do it. There's one, because we enjoy it, and we can offer some of the stuff that we've learned, like what you guys are doing with your shows. Other people can come in and offer their experiences to other people that are less experienced, and just sharing our knowledge. So being able to help people that are, having their first clutch and haven't bred something before, or they want to pair stuff. So we'll do the egg cutting section, and we'll actually say to each other, we'll try to keep it to like half an hour, 40 minutes, keep the show short. So we normally get through the egg cutting, but then we've got a lot of people asking questions, and we don't have thousands of viewers. It might be 30 or 40 people or something or other at certain points. But I'm like, what do you do? Like, we want to help people. We want to try to share what we know, and hopefully, get more people interested and involved in the hobby and that sort of thing. So then it becomes, a questionnaire. So we just decide, we'll just answer the questions and carry on. Sorry, what was your question? I sidetracked myself. I forgot what you asked then.
That's okay. It's kind of a good distraction. I was because you've hit a bit of a personal best with your clutches this year. But
that's all right. Back to the clutches. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So then and we were trying to decide during the thing. I was like, do we tell everyone, or do we just let people guess as we go along? So we kind of, I know I told you before, but
that's right. We'll keep it for later. Cool. So
I will at the end of the, sorry, before you just go on, we did talk about it. So at the end of the season, because you always hear about people, and you always see like the good clutches. You never see the failures.
That's right.
I lost a girl this year. She became egg bound and had complications and died quite rapidly. There's things like that happen. When you have a lot of animals, you see this more often. When you got 5 snakes or 10 snakes, you don't see it. When you've got several hundred you're working with, you see a lot. You'll get clutches of slugs. You'll get a nice clutch that you think's all nice, and half the eggs die off. So we actually I said to Brent, because I've got it all listed down, I said it'd actually be good to do a show and talk about statistics, like, here's how many clutches I've had, here's how many slugs I've had, here's how many good eggs I've had, and here's what I've actually hatched. And, to actually see the numbers, because I think people think, you buy a pair of snakes for $1,000, they're $500 each, and, they'll have 20 eggs, so I'm going to make all this money. It doesn't work that way. My last rodent bill was $3,000.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a big order. That wasn't a lot of stuff. So,
and then your power bill on top of that as well.
Oh yeah, it's about $3,000 a quarter.
Yeah.
And if you're raising animals up, versus just buying an adult pair or whatever. Or if you're like me and you let 2 male green tree pythons on the loose by accident, like that, it kind of sets you back a few years. Things happen.
Talking about let one on the loose. As I mentioned before, I was working away. My wife didn't quite shut one of the hatchie drawers she'd managed to get feeding. So it was a caramel post double het xanthic albino from a moonglow pair.
Ooh.
So I'm like, she goes,
That's a mouthful.
This one, yeah. So she goes, this one is not in this tub. I said, well, obviously you didn't shut the tub properly. So this disappeared. So this was probably March this year. 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks, probably last week. We're walking out the door. My wife screams, there's a snake. I'm like, what's gotten out now? Thinking, did I not shut a drawer? Had a look, and it was the caramel that had actually gotten out like 6 months earlier, sitting at the doorstep. Like we hunted high and low and never found it. And here we are walking out the door, and here it was. I'm like, I'm sure that's the one that got out. So we had to backtrack because I was away. So my wife was sending me photos. Went back, found the tub, found the snake, and mashed it. I'm like, yep, that's it. And actually just fed it last night. Smashed the food. So there you go. There. One that escaped that I actually found. I thought it was definitely gone. Figured the dog would probably kill it or something, or a bird or something. But yeah, here we go. Six months, probably best part of 6 months later, and here it was still cruising around. So you never know. You might have chondros.
Well, at least it's at my in-laws' place. So worst case, if it pops back up, at least it's their place. But who knows? They're a couple of years in now, I think. So I'm not holding out high hopes.
A while ago.
Yeah. I reckon they've been turned into a powerful owl pellet. Yeah. No, well. So speaking of, eggs and getting your hatchies and stuff like that, have you got any sort of like tips that you might want to share with some people out there that maybe it's their first hatchie season and they got a clutch of carpets that are being a bit painful? Have you got any tips to get them feeding? Apart from pull your hair out.
Ask Luke.
Yeah, pull your hair out. First thing, feed at night time. Don't try during the day. Obviously, they're a nocturnal creature, so I always get my best results. Quiet time. 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and so, I mean, you can start earlier sometimes because I've got a lot to get through. So sometimes it'll be 7 o'clock, and you should hear the yelling in the house. Like you're sitting there trying to get one. Finally, one takes it, and someone. I've got a 16-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter, and one of them comes stomping out of the room. Like, I'm like, shut up! Like stop, tramping through the house like an elephant. So they know. Like I'll say, I'm feeding night. They're like, okay. They stay in their rooms and there's silence in the house. So keeping it, not a lot of vibration, so to speak. Try to keep the room. I'll have a light on, but I'll try to have it a bit darker. And obviously at night time when they're active. In actual terms of feeding, if it's Morelia, I'll normally always try pinky rats first, and I'll actually try to have the pinky rat a bit hotter than what I would normally. So I'll defrost. I don't defrost a lot. So if you've got a clutch of, let's just say 20 for argument's sakes, I'll defrost maybe 3 pinky rats, and literally go there, because you get some that just, no matter what you try, just don't want to eat. So you move on to the next one. So I'll defrost them in hot water out of the tap. Always make sure you put your hand and go, yep, that's pretty warm. And I find with that added body heat, you suddenly put your hand in front, you got this little tiny hatchie, and it's picking up this massive heat source in front of it. I think it can be hard for it to actually pick up the food item. So I have mine in racks. So my temperature in the rack is quite high, like 34 to sometimes 35 degrees. I find the heat helps them fire up, especially once you get them feeding. It really cranks their metabolism along. Unlike some lucky people that get chondros to eat straight out of the egg, I actually wait for my stuff to shed. So I normally just leave the clutch in the incubator in a tub. So I'll clean the tub out, put some paper towel down, put a water bowl in there, which I'll check every couple of days. And I'll leave the clutch in there and normally wait till they shed, providing there's room. And then once they've shed, I'll take them out, put them in the racks. And I normally find there's this point between, I'd say between a week and 2 weeks. So it's like a sweet spot. You get this, for whatever reason, you'll get the right night, and everything will feed with minimal effort, so to speak. And if you kind of miss that window, I find if you go too far, it's like they've absorbed what's left of the yolk in the egg. They've got no fuel left, and their metabolism shut down, I guess. So you need to get that metabolism. So nice warm food, nice quiet, nice high temperature in the tubs. Somewhere for them to hide. I normally put them on paper towel, and most of the time I used to put hides in everything, and then obviously that's a pain in the butt when there's lots and lots of hatchies. And so I find with paper towel, they'll actually go under the paper towel. So I'll grab a pair of tweezers. I can slide the tub out. You can look underneath, see if they're in between the two sheets or underneath, so I can have a look where the snake is. Put it back, and I just use tweezers to peel back the paper towel and push it out of the way. And I'll then offer the pinky. I'll normally just put it in front of their head in case they're asleep. I mean, they've got no eyelids, so I don't know if they're sound asleep or they're actually looking at me and what's going on. So, and I'll normally leave it there and watch for a bit of tongue flicker. Like that'll let me know that they're smelling. And then I'll just gentle bit of movement, and I'll kind of watch the reaction of the snake. If they don't do much, I'll rub on their back in their midsection. So just gentle. It might even just be like the foot of the pinky, like just a very light touch, so they feel something, which will obviously get them to move. Some you'll get, you'll literally do that, and their natural reaction is to strike. I like to get them to strike. I find once you can get them to strike, sometimes 2-3 times, suddenly they'll grab, and then that's when you freeze. So you offer it the feed. As soon as it grabs it and you let go, it's like freeze. And if you can, slowly, back away. Watch out for shadows. I've had, snakes where you happen to move the tweezers across and the shadow goes across their eyes and they drop and go, what was that? So, little things like that, just watch out for. So come to the side, keep your hand, out of kind of that heat sensing pit kind of range. So you either come from the side or up above. So, so if they're looking, your hand's up above the shelf above. So try to keep your hand out of the way. Don't, have the pinky here, the snake there, and your hand in front, so you've got the massive heat source. So try to keep from an angle. Offer head first. Gentle touch on the back. If that doesn't work, as Luke mentioned before, touch on the back of the neck, which will get them to, often they don't like it, so they'll snap and turn around and grab. And if that doesn't work, you can try what I call slap feeding. So actually give them a little bit of a whack on the head, a touch on the tail, and try to feist them up, try to get them to strike. If they're placid, what I'll find is you'll get some that will just bolt. And if they, don't matter what you do, there's no tongue flick or, and you touch them and they're just going around the thing and they're trying to launch out, shut the drawer, walk away, because they're just not going to eat. And all you're going to do is agitate that animal. I don't like to get it to that point because I find it's almost like an association that they get the smell, the scent of the prey item, whatever it is. And if you've peed them off to the point that they're crapping their pants, so to speak, and they're trying to launch themselves out of the tub and get away from it, the next time that smell goes in there, they're going to have a similar reaction, and it's very hard to get them to feed from that point in time, which is where you might go, rightio, now I'll try a fuzzy mouse, give them something different, and try a gentler technique with them. So there are a couple of the techniques I use. I used to use scenting. I mean, you can scent with, you could probably wipe it in grease and scent with grease, I suppose. But I've done skink tails. Used to catch the old garden skinks around the house and catch them till they drop their tails and let them go again, and then get their tails, mash up their tails in a bit of hot water and make it almost like a paste out of it and dip the pinky head in it. You can brain the pinky. You can try to get a bit of blood from the pinky's nose. I've used duck feathers, quail feathers, pilchards, whitebait, you name anything that's got a different smell. The problem I found with using some of that stuff is that it can be very, very hard to then get them off it. Often they'll wean through, but I find if I can't get them to take through the methods, I will then go into an assist feed, into a force feed. So meaning that I'll get the snake, grab its tail, grab its head, get its mouth open, stick the head of the mouse in, or the pinky rat, just enough into its mouth so the head's like in its mouth. I'll gently pinch the head of the snake in the jaw and pull it back to try and catch it on the teeth. I'll then let it go in the tub. Some will just automatically, first reaction is generally try to back out and spit it out. And some will try that, and then they'll sit there, and they'll just hold it in their mouth. And others will just, for a little bit, and then they'll just start to eat. So, and that's really good if you can get them to assist feed like that. And the next time you go to feed them, offer them the food again. And often they'll take it, or it might a couple of assist feeds, and then they'll kind of get in the swing and they'll feed it. And I'll repeat that process 3, 4, 5 times, whatever it needs to be, depending on the prey item, because each time it goes in the mouth, it covers the rodent with saliva, which makes it very, very slippery. And eventually you'll get to the point that you'll get in the mouth and get it halfway down, and then you'll just get the tweezers. And I wouldn't recommend anybody to do it unless they're experienced or got someone to show them how to do it properly. But you can force feed it. You've got to be very, very careful how you do it. You can force it through the side, tear throats. You can cause damage if you've got a larger prey item in there. So it's a method. I've done it many times, and I find it the easiest way for something that's being a terror to get feeding. And each time I'll offer it a food item. If it knocks it back or does start doing laps around the intake, I'll just grab the snake. I'll force feed a smaller item. Sometimes that'll be 2 pinky mice in a carpet python, just to give it feed, put in the drawer, and I don't even touch it. Don't even go back for another week, and let it go. And eventually, you'll go in there. You'll do your same technique of offering it a food, and one day it'll just grab it, smash up, and coil it. And the other thing I would recommend for anybody, if you get them feeding, feed them more often than not. So don't feed on Monday and go, oh great, it's had a feed. We'll now leave it till next Monday. I really recommend feeding, like every 4 days if you can, for maybe 4 or 5 feeds. And because what I've found is when you get them to feed, if you leave them for 7 to 10 days, it's almost like you've got to start again. You go back and offer them another feed. They've digested that meal. The metabolism slowed down. You're then going in and you're trying to get that snake to feed again. And some will automatically take it, and others are like you spend half an hour getting going, you finally get them going, and then you're back to square one. When you get them to feed, you've obviously got nice high temperatures on your hatchery racks. Get them to take that first feed. 3-4 days later, bang in with another one. And if they, sometimes you got to work a little bit, you get it to take another one. By the time you got the 5th, you're opening that drawer, offering that food item, and they're just bang, coiling up, smashing it, and eating it down. Once you've got that reaction going really well for a few feeds, you can then back off to once a week if that's what you want to do. Yep. But I find, I don't know how you guys find it, but I find if you feed more regularly, particularly as a neonate, once they've got those feeds in, they'll respond really well. Once you've got that feeding response, that's when you can just start, if you want to go in once a week, go, oh, yep, these guys have all had like 6-7 feeds now. I can just go once a week, give them a feed, and I'll take it, and you're off and running. But yeah, how do you guys want same sort of thing with getting them feeding? Or
I used to be pretty much like every 7 to 14 days a long time ago, but straight out of the egg now, I'm trying to pump a bunch of food into them, basically. Not force it, but yeah, I like that kind of like every 4 or 5 days thereabouts, just to try to do like small meals more frequently. Yeah, because it gets them kind of clued into it. They go, yep, okay, this is what I've got to do. I'm full. I'm eating food. So, yeah, I'm the exact same way. Like I'll probably feed these greens again tomorrow. The rate they're going, and it only takes a few weeks, and then all of a sudden they're good, and then you can space it out to that 7 to 10 days or thereabouts. It's just about kind of getting that brain function going. That this is what I need to do. I need to catch this. I need to eat this. And once they've kind of clued it in for those first 5 or 6, then they're generally pretty good from there.
Yeah. Definitely. Same as what you tell people when you're selling a hatchie. Same thing. Get it home. First thing you do is get it established feeding. Once it's established feeding, you can then introduce your handling to it slowly but surely. Most important thing is it has to eat.
Correct.
Let it just take the time, get it feeding. It's the same with every single hatchie here. Don't play with them, don't touch them, don't do anything. I literally open the drawer up, fill up their water bowl. I mean, their turds are tiny. I don't even bother changing the paper towel till they've probably had 4 feeds, unless, of course, you've spilled a water bowl or something like that and I need to. But, yeah, the less I can touch them and handle them, the more stress-free they are, the better I can get that feeding regime going.
Yeah. So Ryan Cox brought up a pretty interesting question here that I wanted to be bringing up. He just asked, are rat pinks the choice just to make things easier as they grow so you don't have to transition from mice to rats?
Yeah, I try to. Some are buggers. I kind of have I just defrost everything together here. So, I might be feeding a rack where I've got, for example, something comes out of the egg, feeds bang straight away. And then I've got other stuff that's a pain in the butt and it's taking me, I might have used a mouse to get it feeding or whatever. So I'll defrost rats and mice together in one container. So they might be, slightly bigger and slightly smaller, and I'll feed the whole lot. If you get them early enough, so let's say you started off on fuzzy mice, going to the point that I say about feeding every 3 to 4 days, it normally gives them a very aggressive feeding response. So once they start to take it, as soon as that food comes in and they grab it and smash it, that's when you make a transition. So if they've got that food response, and if you don't kind of get that, defrost rats and mice together. So to just take out some of the smell. So if you've been using fuzzy mice, throw in one fuzzy mice into a couple of rats when you're feeding rats to everything else, and then offer that snake that's eating the mice a rat as well. And often they'll kind of sniff it, they'll come up, they'll want it. And you can use a technique I call stroke in the back, where you just start to gently rub up and down their spine, and they'll start to arch up and push against it, right? And when they start to do that pushing up, they're going to eat, right? They just, you've just got to keep that teasing and apply that pressure on them, and they normally want to feed then. They're just not sure about the smell. They're like, I haven't smelled this before. And you can work with it. And once you've kind of get that in, don't stray away. Stick to your game plan. So if it takes the mouse, takes the rat, just keep going with rats. I've got a couple here that I'm having a bugger of a time getting on the rats. I'll get them to go. They'll change over, but sometimes you just got to work it. And a bit of starvation never goes astray either.
Yeah.
Don't take it. Eventually they'll get hungry and they'll want to eat something. But so I find if you have to get it started on a mouse, try to get it switched over to a rat as quick as you can. Once it's feeding really well, so maybe 4 or 5 feeds. Start getting, particularly with Morelia, with Antaresia, probably doesn't really matter if they eat a couple of adult mice versus a weaner rat or something or other. But certainly I try to switch them over as quick as I can.
Yep.
Yeah.
Makes
sense. Speaking of feeders, a while ago you actually bred pretty much all your own feeders, didn't you?
I did. I actually started breeding rats and mice. It kind of, I got to a point I probably had probably 60, 70 reptiles. So I had quite a few lizards and monitors, but then I was building up snakes as well. So I had a friend that used to work in work in a place where they had lab rats and mice. And I decided to start breeding my own. So that was probably 2002 or 3, something like that. And I find it was a good balance that I had enough of a rodent collection to feed everything that I had and then build up extra in my freezer. Then when I got enough extra in the freezer, I was able to sell those on. I used to make a few phone calls to a few mates and say, I've got some extra rats. You guys want to buy any? They'd come around and, back in the days where I was happy to have people come to my house, would buy the excess, and that would cover the food and shavings. So I almost got to the point I was able to feed all my collection for free of charge, other than 14 hours every Saturday out in the garage cleaning all the rats and mice I amassed. So I did that for a number of years. Then I was at that point, so 2004, a friend, myself and a mate, Neil Cash, started wholesaling reptile products, sole distributor for Tim and Donna down at Ultimate Reptile Supplies. So we started doing that. Neil decided to go on his own way and do his own thing. So I carried on with the business for probably, I think I worked with and for Tim for about 4 years. So during that time, I got busier and busier and busier. And at the end, it was like, keep maintaining a collection. I'd probably grown into around 100 animals, cut down a lot of lizards, but obviously had more snakes. So cut down on the time frame that I had to look after everything. So Saturdays where I would happily go in the garage for 14 hours cleaning all the rats and mice, I just said, you know what, I can't do everything. Can't be on the road 5 days a week, traveling around to every pet store in New South Wales, come home, then look after, 100-odd reptiles or something at that point in time, and then find time to, clean rats and mice on the weekend. I'd sometimes get like 6 pallets of, reptile equipment up from URS, and I'd be up till 3 a.m. trying to unpack it all, get it all inside the house, and, it was all done from home. It wasn't in the warehouse. So it was all done by hand. So I'd made the call to sell everything up. So I kept all the rodent tubs, just got rid of all the rodents, time framed up. And then as years went on and depression kicked in and all sorts of stuff and life went bad, I decided to get back into it to try and dig myself out of a mental hole that I'd, been a long, dark tunnel of no goodness. And, I got the opportunity to start doing it on a more of a commercial level. So that started off, I'd say, so I had all the equipment that I had, which I'd amassed over the years, rodent breeding cages and rats and mice. I probably had around 300 mice, females, and 300 rats. And I couldn't keep up. I couldn't believe it. I was being sold out. I was started supplying rats and mice to the reptile park when John Mostyn was working up there. And I actually had to get to the point that I said, mate, I can't keep up. I need to expand. So I actually spent quite a bit of money and expanded, and I took the collection, so to speak, from that 300 females out to about 1,200 mice and rats into a warehouse, which happened to be owned by my wife's boss. And he goes, mate, you can share this, you can use this, and come down here, and we'll help you out. And I'm like, oh, awesome, thanks very much. And mate, it was unbelievable. It was so busy, I just could not keep up. And then to amass that, by that point in time, this was probably 6 or 7 years ago. At that point in time, when I moved into the warehouse, I think I was probably around 150, 160 snakes. And suddenly I've got an endless food supply. Literally an endless food supply. I'd gas hundreds and hundreds of things every day. And I literally go, okay, I need to bag up some of this, put it in the freezer, and I would literally take, the mouse breeding tubs and that. I'd take 3 or 4 of them just filled with rats or mice down the snake room, because it was all in the same warehouse, down the snake room, and I would just feed off everything I needed to. Then I'd come back with whatever was left over. I'd just bag up and put in the freezer. So suddenly I'm like, oh, business is going well. It's making plenty of money, selling plenty of rats and mice. I need more snakes. I bought more snakes. So I was able to then quarantine at home and not take down the warehouse. So I was able to bring home stuff, quarantine at home, get checks, tests, all that sort of stuff as required. And then down the warehouse it went. And, then the collection at that point went, plus breeding season and holdbacks. The pepper project was going on, and suddenly it jumped up from 100 or 50 odd snakes into over 300, holdbacks and everything, not including the stuff I was selling. And then it grew and grew and grew. And then the same thing kind of happened, I guess. Was a two-folded prong. The guy that owned the warehouse had an offer he couldn't refuse and put on the market. And my wife works flat out 5 days a week, long hours. And, we had 2 younger kids. So, my kids are 16 and 13 now. Back then, they were, 5, 6 years ago, they were a lot younger. So, someone had to take them to school. Someone had to get them from school. So, I would normally get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go down to work. She'd do the drop-off. And then I had to leave down the warehouse at 1 o'clock to get back home for the afternoon duty. All the rats and mice, we get to the weekend and we would get down to work at 9 o'clock, a bit of a rest on Saturday morning, get down to work at 9 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes work till 3 and 4 in the morning, just trying to catch up, go back home. And then I would literally go down the next day to gas what we couldn't get through that day. And then, back to Monday, off we go again. So it got to the point that, it was good to feed mistakes. It was good to make some income as a business. I went back to supplying the reptile park for a couple of years, doing that as well, and plenty of regular big customers. But the workload it just got to the point that was just too much. It was 7 days a week. And unlike snakes, we can go, you want to go away for a week, I can go through, check everything's got water, clean, tidy, and I can go away for a week and not worry that something's going to, die. You can't do that with rats and mice. The food, and they don't stop. They're mammals. They eat so much food and drink so much water and everything. To go away on holidays, for 2 weeks, I had to find someone else that was able to come in to maintain and look after the animals. And the 3 weeks prior to going on holidays, you'd have to work 3 times as hard, because to get on top of everything before you go, to make sure everything's gassed, there's minimal amount of rodents in the colony to feed and look after. Then you go away. By the time you've been away for 2 weeks, there's another, 4,000 or 5,000 pinkies and stuff that's already been dropped, given birth to. You come back 2 weeks, everything's dirty again. So where are you at? Stage 1. Then you got to, bust your guts for another 3 weeks to get on top of it. And that's just to do the rodents, not forgetting that there's, a room down there with 300-400 snakes in it as well that all have the same thing. Need to get back in there and clean all those and do all that. So it was really hard. Sometimes it was very mentally hard. I struggled with suicidal depression for a number of years. I won't go into detail, but it got to a point that I changed from, self-harming and all sorts of silly stuff, and I was literally eating myself to death. So that was when we got rid of the rats, mice, sold the premises, got rid of it all. And as much as I miss it, it's also the best thing I ever did.
Yeah.
So,
I suppose at least nowadays you could probably enjoy your reptiles a little bit more rather than busting your guts so much. At least you're at home with your snakes, and sure, the rodents still cost you an arm and a leg to have to buy in, but
yeah,
spending a bit more time on the actual thing you love.
Oh, it's much nice. I've just gone back to the gym. So I was just hit the gym last week, just started back there again. So this is week number 2 for me. So the legs are a bit sore today after leg day at the gym. But yeah, to be able to get up, make sure the kids get off to school, go up to the gym, spend an hour or so there, hour, 2 hours at the gym, come home, have my protein drinks, have a rest for half an hour, and then be able to get involved in the snakes, whereas it was a good drive down to work. It was 40, 45 minutes, and peak hour traffic, an hour to an hour and 20, depending being in Sydney. So it wasn't like, you could go down there and, start doing some work. Whatever you did, you had a time frame on. So if you're going through cleaning rat tubs, which you did every day, you can only get to a point. If you go through tubs and there's a lot of weaners that have to come off and everything, you have to get to the point that it's going to take you an hour to an hour and a half to gas them all, to weigh them all, to bag them all, to get them in the freezer, to go down and feed whatever excess there is. You're limited. So it was really hard. It's good, but if I had them at home, like if you look at a Peter Birch scenario where he's got himself set at home, it would be a different story. I'd probably still have him, because I can just walk out the backyard, go, what, I'm hungry, it's lunch, I'll just leave this here, I'll go and have something to eat, then I'll just walk back to the backyard and I'll carry on working, then I can come in for dinner, and, it's all different. But that travel time and have to be home just, killed it, I guess. So, much easier.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, mate. Well, we've kind of hit that magical 2-hour mark where it's
just flew.
We might have to get you back for round 2, Daz, because that's
sure,
I think we only went through about half of the actual questions, but the amount of information you've thrown out there for all of our listeners has been absolutely phenomenal.
No worries, anytime.
Yeah, we might have to definitely hit you back up, maybe in the near future. Do you have anywhere that you can throw out that, if anybody wants to contact you or whatever, or, pick up some new snakes or whatever, like where can they find you at? Yeah,
so Darren Whitaker on Facebook, or Morelia by Design, and also Darren Morelia by Design on Instagram. I am trying to work out how to YouTube these days. These old folks like myself aren't that great with technology, but it's getting there. And I do have a website in the making, so I finally... Having this time at home has allowed me to finally catch up on stuff that I've been trying to do for a long time. But if you want to catch up, flick me a message, hit me up on Facebook. It's probably the best place on either to my account or on Morelia by Design. I'll go to either and check them as often as I can. So hit me up by all means, and feel free to ask any questions. I get people ask me questions about all sorts of stuff all the time. If I can help, I'll happily do so.
Excellent.
Awesome stuff. We'll make sure to chuck your links up on Facebook and stuff. So if anybody out there is listening can pick up some more carpets or some Antaresia or something like that off you.
Definitely.
Yeah, I always enjoy looking at your tables at the expo just to see what other crazy colours are out there these days. Yeah,
I was supposed to go away working. I am going away in mid-January, and I actually had to message my boss because there's 2 shows back to back, weekend after weekend. Adrian Hammond's and the Horse Rehearse one. I'm like, mate, I need to be home for these 2 weekends. He's like, oh yeah, no worries. So it's like, bloody hell, I'm supposed to be away for work. And, not that it matters, I'll just go on a different shift and roster. It's all good, but yeah. So, but yeah, I look forward to the shows. I love the shows, catching up with you. So forward to catching up with you blokes there too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that'd be good.
Definitely. That sounds good. All right, guys. So we'd like to say a massive thank you to Eric and Owen and the rest of the NPR crew for having us. If you'd like to contact them, it's best to find them at moreliapythonradio.net and email them at info@moreliapythonradio.net. As far as contacting us in our social media platforms, you can email us at australianherpetoculture@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Make sure to check out our Teespring store for podcast merch. The link is on the Facebook page. To see more of what Jason is doing, make sure to follow him on Facebook and Instagram at The Gecko Effect. For myself, you can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, and Teespring under Beach of Scaly Beasts. We hope to have you back here next week for another episode of the Australian Herpetoculture Podcast. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.